Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again. Carol Danvers has had it rough on this show. From the Avengers treating her mind control, rape, and forced birth of her own rapist as something to laugh about in Avengers number 200, to the over-the-top authoritarian, and downright boneheaded at times, decisions she makes in Civil War II, we have just had nothing to really show her off in a positive light. Mind you, that's probably expected in a show whose tagline is spotlighting bad comics, but even some of the goofier crap we've looked at over the years has shown something of the better quality of other heroes. Not so much Carol. Hell, I don't even know if she'll ever make a Secret Origins Month appearance because of the complications there. She technically appears as a supporting character to Marvel originally before eventually becoming Miss Marvel, so it's harder to figure out what's the better example to use for her first appearance at all. But that negative look we've seen of her over the years is something that's bugged one of my fans. An adamant Carol fan who managed to get the Patreon-sponsored slot and decided, hey, let's show something really good with her finally. And thus we have today's storyline, Captain Marvel Volume 10, number 12 to 16. And wow, I just realized that there have been 10 Captain Marvel volumes over the years. Some of those are a result of Marvel deciding to arbitrarily renumber books in the last 2 decades, some of them just being miniseries, but thanks for keeping it easy for new readers, comic book industry! So hey, what's the best way to make people like Carol Danvers again than a story about how she needs to murder the Avengers? We're off to a rough start. Let's dig into Captain Marvel, the Last Avenger, and see what this really is all about.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he is a man, punch, sporadically a grouch. Linkara, he has his own spaceship, but he's always on his couch. Linkara, ghosts, gods, a universe in flux. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
We're reading 5 issues today, so for the sake of time, we'll skip the covers, except to say that they're all pretty decent, especially this first one showing off this evil variant of Carol's outfit. Red and black is already always a good color combo, but the tattered sash transitioning into the red boot like flowing blood, while nonsensical, is a cool touch. We open in low Earth orbit, with T-minus 21 hours. You never know what waits for you. No matter how much you prepare, in fact, preparing is pointless. What fresh hell does Twitter have for you this morning? Because what hits you will never be what you expect. And that's the case for me, and for those of you who don't read comics, because we're seeing Thor at Avengers Mountain, which is, or at least was, their base in 2019. Said base is actually the corpse of a dead Celestial hollowed out, like nowhere if you're only familiar with the MCU. Now, I know from reading up that it's not like they just arbitrarily decided to do that to this thing, but I don't know. Feels like it's much easier to just make a building instead of trying to install plumbing inside of a dead giant. This is Antarctica, so Thor is in the process of clearing off ice from the thing when he's suddenly attacked by Captain Marvel in the evil outfit we saw on the cover. I have been so many things, but I always thought, no matter what, in the end, I'm a hero. I'm pretty sure Thor was gonna half-ass that de-icing job. I have saved the Avengers from a lawsuit. That dream is over now. Still better than that one where I showed up at the Avengers meeting naked. She was hoping to take him down before he could summon Mjolnir, but alas, he knocks her back and a good strike to her head and knocks off the helmet, revealing that it's Carol to him.
Carol? What madness is this? What black magic has bewitched you? Are you on the drugs? Captain America warned me about this!
I need you to trust me. I need you to forgive me. I need you all to forgive me. Just give it a couple years, Carol. Superhero universes have a surprisingly short memory. The fight takes them across the world, and it's very clear that Thor is going to win this, until she manages to Well, it's not clear exactly. She either sends Mjolnir so far away that he can't summon it, or seemingly destroyed it. Either way, she evens the odds and seems to kill Thor. She then travels to the now abandoned home of the Inhumans and the dark side of the moon, where she delivers Thor's head to this new villain, Vox Supreme.
Excellent. Yes, this will do nicely. I have been wanting a new centerpiece for my dinner table. We can even hollow out the skull and fill it with candy.
He declares that she only has 16 hours left to kill 5 Avengers, leading us into the next issue. I don't know if there was a backup story or an annual issue or something in between that gave us some story details, but the credits page summary of the character and book actually gives us the details on this Vox Supreme guy, who I remind you only really premiered in the previous issue. But that was before she murdered Thor and presented the decapitated head to Vox Supreme, a mutated Kree who recently wiped out almost the entire Inhuman race. Vox Supreme has given Carol 24 hours to kill the core Avengers. I'm sure you would have enjoyed seeing that revealed in story, but that would have gotten in the way of the fight scenes. We begin issue 13 in Tony Stark's swanky bathroom. Tony Swank. Hate to say it, but this is not what I'd call a swanky bathroom. Admittedly, we can only see a little of it, but it just looks kind of grayish, not even a vanity mirror with lights around it. Just saying, I've been in hotels with nicer looking bathrooms than this. Anyway, Carol tackles him through a wall before he can set up defenses to stop her from approaching the building. He summons his armor as he's flown out of the building. She narrates that he had to be next because of his connections to everyone. Like with Thor, it has to be fast and furious. Dominic Toretto is ready in the streets to attach Tony to a rocket-powered sports car while nodding and saying,
Family.
Carol, is that you? God damn it, Carol, we did this in Civil War II already. Are you really killing me again? She talks about how much affection she has for Tony and vice versa, which means she can take advantage of it, force him to make mistakes. His energy blasts against her just end up giving her a power-up. Carol, I don't know what's happening, but you can't win this. Even if you can get past me, and you can't, you think the rest of the Avengers won't tear you apart?
People you know and care about are trying to kill you. Have you noticed?
As she flies into space with him, she breaks his windpipe so he can't call for help, then rips the armor open, leaving him in space to blast off like Team Rocket. Even got the twinkle. Another win. But at what cost? Your outfit seems to be self-regenerating, so probably no more than a few bucks for coffee and lunch, I imagine. Well, the art is a little unclear. She opens her helmet, does a shush gesture, and then Star Lady here. We'll learn this is a living pocket dimension named Singularity, but since I'm not a regular reader, I was really lost when this happened. Anyway, as you've probably sussed out by now, yeah, they ain't dead. Vox Supreme is monitoring her through her evil suit, but can't seem to see into Singularity, so that's where she's keeping them for this whole ruse. She explains how this all went down. The Kree had a whole thing happen recently. I mean, it's Marvel, could have happened in any number of storylines. I was putting together the new additions to the voting list for Event Comics Month 5, and was glad to see only 3 new events qualified from Marvel. In the past, they've had as many as 5 or 6 added. And consequently, a lot of the Kree are refugees now. While in space to clear her head, I guess she decided to vomit out the Venom symbiote?
What was that black goo?
She awoke in the abandoned Inhuman city in the suit, an extension of Vox Supreme. An editor's box informs us that this guy is a combination of the villain from Death of the Inhumans and the Kree Supreme Intelligence. Because comic books.
I am Vox Supreme, and I am the future. The future is black and green. Cyberpunky, but also black goo.
She can't harm him as long as she's wearing that suit, and he demonstrates his power by blowing up the Kree refugee camp she had visited earlier. Vox promises to destroy all the rest of them in 24 hours unless she agrees to do what he says, which includes killing the core Avengers. And thus she begins her plan, one that she needs to do without speaking a single word. She heads to an abandoned S.H.I.E.L.D. facility. Project Gemini. I told them to burn this place to the ground when I found out about it. I mean, an entire S.H.I.E.L.D. facility dedicated to that 70s show that became Riding with Death? Or the Will Smith movie? Either way, burn it all down. Actually, I think nuke it from space was the exact phrase. Never mind. S.H.I.E.L.D. was trying to make xenomorphs. That figures. No, it's a facility for making clones of the Avengers, and of course they didn't do what she told them to, explaining how she can deliver dead bodies to Vox Supreme, though if the suit is monitoring her, wouldn't it also sense something like this? Anyway, next issue. Thor is naturally pissed about being cloned, But it turns out Carol didn't decapitate the clone.
They only cloned Thor's head? What has happened to my beautiful and majestic body?
Well, you see, there was a very lonely intern, and, well, she didn't like the beard and decided she didn't really need the head, so... She says it's a mystery for later, and she has to leave, though also opens up a closet in the pocket dimension. That as a bunch of the dead clones fall out onto the ground. Gasp! Don't be babies. Like you haven't seen things a billion times more horrific than a bunch of dead clones of you and your best friends lying on the ground? Come on. It's not that, Carol. I just realized that my clone is a bigger penis than me. How does that happen? All three admit this plan is awful, but it's the best she could do alone and on the fly. She needs to get the bombs defused or reveal their locations before she tries anything, and can't risk Vox sensing them once they leave Singularity. There's a clone of Hawkeye there too, which Thor is confused by since it's the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider who's currently an Avenger, and not him. There was no clone of Robbie in the shield bunker. I brought the Hawkeye clone just in case. I'm hoping that this guy is a bigot against humans and can't really tell the difference. Based on the information she gave him, and the fact that the guy is literally named the Latin word for voice, Tony and Carol speculate that Vox's powers are based on sound in some way, and that might be the key to getting Carol out of the suit. She heads out with the Tony clone, instructing the two of them to think of a better plan while she's gone.
We do not even have any charming mortal board game with which to amuse ourselves.
Well, we have no choice then, Thor. Let's play puppets with the corpses. She delivers the clone corpse to him, and he points out that she needs to speed this up. It's taken her 10 hours to deliver only 2 Avengers, and she still needs 4 more. She tries to get him to reveal his plan for the corpses, but of course he has no intention of doing that.
All I'll say is this, Captain. My goals are noble. My goals are noble, which is why I'm forcing you to murder your friends so I can harvest things from their corpses and threatening to blow up innocent people. When you get right down to it, I'm the hero of this story, frankly.
Vox talks to himself, or to his green and black dialogue balloons, about how she's clearly up to something, especially since she keeps being able to hide from them for short times. However, they're too close to their goals to risk it by further provoking her with another explosion. And we see that he's made good use of the Thor head.
Oh dear. Sweet rabbit, I don't suppose you have a spare body somewhere you could give me?
Carol considers the phrasing of Vox's threat, like what he was blowing up was more than just a bomb, but loses that train of thought when she detects Black Panther outside Palo Alto, California for some reason, and gets blasted by him. He doesn't know it's Captain Marvel, meaning his gun supercharged her with the kind of blast it was.
Did you think I was going to continue to let you pick the Avengers off one by one? That I was going to just wait around until you made your way to me?
I want to be next, damn it! I always get picked last! She manages to fry his suit, but unfortunately, before she can fake kill him, she's attacked by She-Hulk to end the issue. Which is a bit of a fake out because her fighting She-Hulk was on the cover, but she's only at the end of the comic. Anyway, this was during a time when She-Hulk was going through some stuff trauma-wise, and thus her transformation was into a brutish Hulk like her cousin. With the others, there was always an edge that I could take away. Thor's hammer, Tony's robots, T'Challa's suit. With Jen, there's just Jen. I must take Jen away from Jen! She narrates that her fight with Thor took hours and she was able to supercharge herself during it, and that allowed her to beat him in the end. But that's not going to happen with She-Hulk. She also realizes in her narration how Vox is blowing up the camps. People. Vox Supreme put his bombs in the actual Kree refugees themselves. I knew those free appendectomy giveaways to Kree refugees were too good to be true! She-Hulk rips off the mask and is finally stunned upon seeing it's Captain Marvel. Taking advantage of the moment, Carol gambles, absorbing the energy and electricity in her brain to knock her out. She admits this maneuver will kill anyone who isn't a Hulk, and it's risky even now, but hopes it'll do the trick. Out in space, she collects pieces of Iron Man's armor as she brings T'Challa and Jen into Singularity. She shares her theory about the bombs being in the refugees, and she hopes Tony can whip up something with the armor pieces. She delivers the 2 new clone corpses to Vox.
Why are they all coming to me naked? And why do they all have clone juices dripping off of them?
You asked for Avengers, not their tech. You get what you demanded and nothing more.
I feel like you're using the letter of the law to defeat the spirit of the law here, and probably not a good idea to be pedantic with the guy who can blow up refugees.
Vox accepts this and she leaves to get her final targets, the villains pointing out that they'll have to kill her next time. My next Avenger will be the first to admit that I'm stronger than he is, and yet I think perhaps I've dreaded this one more than any of the others. We meet again, Two-Gun Kid. No, of course it's Captain America. He knows it's her and that she's taken down all the others. He asks if it's really her and this is the way it has to be, that there is no other way. She confirms that's the case and she hasn't found an alternate plan. And thus Cap drops his shield and surrenders. Look, Carol, I've had a long day. Nazis, white supremacists, a guy calling himself Captain Crypto who wanted to somehow kill people with NFTs. I just want to die, okay? No, he trusts her play and won't waste her time. I have to punch you now. I thought as much. Said the same thing to the Nazis, white supremacists, and Captain Crypto. In Singularity, Cap is brought up to speed. Tony has an idea for how they can win this. Like with all things, we shall turn Vox's greatest strength into his greatest weakness. His color scheme. Later, Carol arrives with the clone Cap and Hawkeye.
I asked for Captain America. Who is this other one?
Sorry, I fought them in a different comic with a bad artist who drew the two blonde-haired white guys exactly the same, so I couldn't tell the difference. She explains that Ghost Rider is currently in hell and thus unavailable. Vox is mad since Hawkeye doesn't have any powers, but Carol points out that neither does Tony Stark. Hell, Black Panther and Steve Rogers are just enhanced humans, and their powers aren't really in their DNA. Thor and She-Hulk are the only ones who could have superpowered DNA. However, Vox points out that she has power in her DNA, so he's gonna take that from her, recreating her helmet, or rather creating a mask around her to silence her. She and the clone corpses are tied to slabs around a big vat full of green liquid to end the issue.
Ah, Captain, your efforts were valiant, but you are a misguided fool with a limited and disappointingly human view of the world. Your people did not understand the full potential of Mountain Dew. I shall harness it! You view us as a villain, but we are not villains. We are architects. Brutalist McDonald's? That was us.
See, you are villains! He says that the Kree pretended to be a great race for millennia, but really they're just a rough draft.
We, a Vox who survived the odds to merge with the best and brightest fragments of the original supreme intelligence and create the greatest version of our own selves. We will birth a master race.
Definitely a good guy, people. Historically, anyone who talks positively about a master race is a hero, right? And thus we reach the finale. Carol is able to squirm enough to activate a device Tony supplied her with, a sonic generator that not only repels the suit off of her, but makes Vox Supreme's head explode. I love you, Tony Stark. I know I keep joking about this, but Civil War II was only 3 years before this. Really goes to show how quickly creative teams wanted to get over that garbage. She also brought Captain America's shield with her to start wailing on him while we go into a flashback to reveal the plan. While she's distracting Vox Supreme, both the Avengers and the reserve members will use special detectors that Tony whipped up to bring the Kree with bombs in them into Singularity, where he'll disarm said bombs, reducing the potential risk if something goes wrong. Not sure how he knows the detector will work, but hey, they're kind of working on the fly here. The distraction seems to be working, but Carol gets knocked into the vat of green liquid and it pours all over her. Vox saying with the Supreme Intelligence voice that it'll transform her into something new. Vox explains that they weren't just harvesting DNA, they were siphoning experiences and memory.
They harvest the very heart of what makes us spectacular. Best of the best. From me, they get my magnificent hair.
Captain Marvel emerges, looking like this.
Jesus Christ!
Even aside from what appears to be a Tony Stark head growing out of her arm and a T'Challa on her back, most of what she's getting is She-Hulk, so she gets to work smashing. The minds of the others are indeed in her head too, and it's making it hard for her to think. Fortunately, the Avengers are doing their jobs and finding the Kree with bombs in them, which they discover seem to all be children, because Vox is an asshole. Back on the moon, Carol starts puking, which is helping purge the others from her system. Vox explains that she took 20 times more than they had planned to use for this procedure, and that it's going to tear her apart when it's done. But in the meantime, want to keep her around for experimentation. Fortunately, because she has part of Thor in her, she's able to summon Mjolnir to come help, while Tony finishes up removing the bombs from the kids. And, well, as you can see, when all you've got is a hammer, every problem looks like a jackass who needs to get his face pounded in. She shoves Vox inside the box he was preparing to contain her, reasoning if it could contain her, it should be able to do the same for him. She is then able to just, burn all the remaining other DNA and whatever out of her system. She can just do that? If she got cancer, could she, burn it all out of her system like that? And consequently drops Mjolnir. The other Avengers arrive. Why,
is there puke everywhere? Oh gods, did Mjolnir hit you in the stomach when you first summoned it? That happened to me the first time I tried it.
So the villain is defeated, and she plans to drop him off at the raft prison for now while they figure out a more permanent way of holding him, as well as destroying the ruins along with their clone bodies. Man, the Inhumans are going to come back eventually and sue her for the crater she left from their stuff. Carol apologizes for this whole mess, but of course they understand that she was in a tough position and did the best she could. After destroying the place, she hugs Singularity and thanks her for all her help. More comic books should feature people hugging sentient pocket dimensions. After signing off Vox Supreme to the raft, she reflects on all this and how she feels a lot better about herself than when she started, given the Kree refugee situation. This one pushed me as far to the edge as I've been in a long time. Forced me to feel the full depth of the human experience in an extremely concentrated dose. Nothing quite says the full human experience quite as much as breaking Iron Man's throat. But yeah, she's tired, and so our comic ends with her going back home. Only for her pet cat, Flurkin? Whichever, wanting some kibble before she sleeps. Given how many times my cats come onto this show wanting attention, got one right here, I sympathize, Carol. The storyline is pretty good, though I don't think it's great. Yeah, apologies to the patron if they were expecting a super positive, gushing review, but honestly, I just found this storyline okay to good. Certainly the best Captain Marvel representation we've had on this show so far, but it's primarily 5 issues of fight scenes. Good fight scenes, I will grant you, but let's talk about the overall problems with it. Vox Supreme is a boring villain. Quite literally, merging 2 villains together usually just ends up resulting in their worst qualities put on display, and in this case, it's just rambling idiocy and naked villainy while pretending that putting bombs in children is somehow morally justifiable because they want to genetically engineer a master race. And while the fight scenes are overall good, they are a little sparsely drawn in details. By virtue of the 2 characters fighting still both being good guys, they actively avoid major population centers or places where they can do some damage. Deserts, space, snowy wastelands, etc. It makes the backgrounds pretty blank most of the time and thus not as visually interesting. They also make a lot of leaps that just happen to be correct, like the sound thing, and no one brings up how similar this all is to symbiotes, especially being harmed by sonic vibrations. I know some people will balk at the idea of Captain Marvel winning these kinds of one-on-one fights because some people are just determined to have who would win type of nerd debates, but the answer is always whomever the writer decides to win. Now, the way that's done can certainly be presented poorly, but I believe every one of these fights and how they went down, using surprise, cunning, the emotions of her opponents, etc. to do the job. Hell, with her versus Thor, that apparently took hours of fighting, though consequently makes it seem a little unrealistic that nobody noticed that this was happening during all that time. I also don't think the ending emotional depths quite go as far as Carol claims they do. Wanting forgiveness for doing something like this, I get that. Feeling the full gamut of the human experience? That's a bit of a stretch. It's a very good story that shows that even when backed into a corner, Captain Marvel will find a way to win the day and save everybody, and that's what you want out of a superhero story, but it's also nothing that blows me away with how good it is. Next time, I'm reshuffling the schedule so I'm no longer a month behind. We've got another Patreon-sponsored review. The first chapter of the manga, E-Robot.
Sitting on my couch reviewing comics, the worst words that you will ever see. It's sad that
Always help friends. Yes, always help friends. And apparently hit them a lot and be really, really grateful when they decide to be gracious and forgive you without a lot of groveling. And promise to polish Mjolnir for the next month because there are puke stains on it. My bad.
Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!